The fluorescent lights above the diner buzzed like angry wasps, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow that made the chipped Formica countertops look even more tired than they were. My feet throbbed in my worn sneakers, the ones with the sole starting to peel away from the left shoe, the ones I'd been meaning to replace for 3 months but couldn't afford to. The smell of burnt coffee and grease hung thick in the air, clinging to my uniform, my hair, my skin. I'd long stopped noticing it, the way you stop noticing a constant ache. "Order up, sweetheart." Jerry's gruff voice cut through the clatter of dishes and the low murmur of late-night conversations. I grabbed the plates, meatloaf special and a burger, both swimming in grease, and plastered on the smile I'd perfected over 2 years of serving people who looked through me like I was made of glass. Tuesday nights at Murphy's Diner were usually quiet. The after-work crowd had thinned, leaving only insomniacs, truck drivers, and the occasional couple seeking greasy comfort food. I preferred it this way. Fewer people meant fewer chances to mess up, fewer reasons for Jerry to dock my already pathetic paycheck. I delivered the plates to table 7, refilled coffee at table 3, and was heading back behind the counter when the bell above the door chimed. I didn't look up immediately. I'd learned not to appear too eager, too desperate for tips. But something made the air in the diner shift, like the pressure change before a storm. 3 men walked in, and suddenly Murphy's Diner felt too small. The first 2 were obviously security. Dark suits that couldn't quite hide the bulk of their builds, eyes that swept the room with professional assessment, hands that rested too casually near their jacket pockets. They moved with synchronized precision, flanking the third man like human shields. But it was him, the one in the center, who stole the oxygen from my lungs. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent, tailored so perfectly it looked like it had been sewn directly onto his body. His dark hair was styled with calculated carelessness, and even from across the room, I could see the sharp line of his jaw, the kind of face that belonged on magazine covers or in movies about dangerous men. A gold watch caught the terrible fluorescent light, gleaming like a warning. He carried danger the way other men carried briefcases, naturally, inevitably. The diner went quiet. Even Jerry stopped his usual banging around in the kitchen. The couple at table 3 suddenly found their plates fascinating. The truck driver at the counter stared into his coffee like it held the secrets of the universe. Everyone knew what he was, even if they didn't know who he was. The 2 security men scanned the diner once more before one of them gave a slight nod. The man in the center moved forward, his expensive shoes clicking against the worn linoleum with each measured step. He chose a booth near the window, the one with the ripped vinyl seat I'd been meaning to suggest Jerry fix, and slid in with the fluid grace of someone who'd never questioned his right to take up space. One security guard positioned himself by the door, the other near the bathroom hallway. Both had clear lines of sight to their boss. I grabbed a menu and a glass of water, trying to ignore the way my hands wanted to shake. Rich people didn't usually come to Murphy's. Men in suits that expensive definitely didn't come to Murphy's. And men who traveled with armed security. Well, they belonged to a world I only glimpsed in movies and news reports about organized crime. My sneakers squeaked on the floor as I approached his booth. Up close, he was even more devastating and more terrifying. His eyes were dark, almost black in the diner's bad lighting, and when they lifted to meet mine, I felt pinned, cataloged, assessed in the span of a heartbeat. "Welcome to Murphy's," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Can I start you with something to drink?" He studied me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Not the way men usually looked at me, the once-over that lingered too long on my chest, or the dismissive glance that said I wasn't worth their time. This was different. This was predatory interest wrapped in expensive cologne and controlled violence. "Coffee?" he said. His voice was deep, smooth, with an accent I couldn't quite place. Something European layered under American English. Black. I wrote it down, even though I'd remember. "I'll be right back with that." I could feel his eyes on me as I walked away, burning into my shoulder blades like twin points of heat. My hands trembled as I poured the coffee. Proper coffee from the fresh pot, not the burnt sludge we usually served. And I took 3 deep breaths before turning back around. The security guard near the door shifted slightly as I approached, his hand moving fractionally closer to his jacket. I pretended not to notice, focusing instead on not spilling the coffee as I set it down on the table. "Have you decided what you'd like to eat?" I asked, pulling out my order pad. "What's good here?" He picked up the coffee cup with long, elegant fingers. No wedding ring, I noticed, then immediately wondered why I'd looked. "Honestly?" The word slipped out before I could stop it. "Nothing's great, but the apple pie is decent if you want dessert, and the breakfast food is usually safe no matter what time of day." The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but something close to it. Honest. How refreshing. He had a small scar above his left eyebrow, barely visible. Another one traced along his jawline, disappearing beneath his collar. These weren't the scars of accidents or childhood mishaps. These were the marks of violence, survived and conquered. "I'll have the eggs, scrambled. Wheat toast, dry." I wrote it down, acutely aware that he was still watching me. "Anything else?" "Your name." The question, or was it a command, caught me off guard. "It's on my tag. I prefer to hear it from you." I swallowed hard. "Elena. Elena Morrison." "Elena." He said it slowly, like he was tasting each syllable. "Italian?" "My mother's side. I never knew her." Why was I telling him this? I never told customers anything personal. "I'll get your order in." I fled back to the kitchen, my heart hammering against my ribs. Jerry gave me a strange look as I clipped the order ticket. "You know who that is," he whispered, his face pale beneath his perpetual cook's flush. "Should I?" "That's Konstantin Volkov." Jerry's voice dropped even lower. "He owns half the city, the half that doesn't appear on any legal documents." My stomach dropped. Yeah, Jerry's eyes darted toward the dining room. "He's exactly what you think he is. Don't say anything stupid. Don't ask questions. And for God's sake, don't spill anything on him." I nodded, my mouth too dry for words. Konstantin Volkov. I'd heard the name before, whispered in the same tones people used for natural disasters and terminal diagnoses. He was the shadow king of the city's underworld, the man who controlled everything from the docks to the downtown high-rises, whose word was law in a system that existed parallel to, and often above, the official one. And I was serving him eggs in a diner that failed health inspections. I busied myself with other tables while Jerry cooked, but I could feel Konstantin's presence like a physical weight, pressing against my awareness no matter where I moved in the diner. The couple at table 3 asked for their check in hushed voices and left without finishing their meals. The truck driver abandoned half his pie. Within 15 minutes, Murphy's had emptied of everyone except Konstantin, his guards, and me. The eggs were ready. I arranged them on the plate with more care than I'd ever given any order, adding the toast just so, making sure everything looked as presentable as possible. Then I carried it out, feeling like I was walking to an execution. "Your eggs," I said, setting the plate down carefully. "Can I get you anything else?" "Sit." I blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Sit down, Elena. It wasn't a request. You've been on your feet for hours, your left foot especially. You're favoring your right side." How had he noticed that? "I can't. I'm working. The diner is empty. Your boss won't mind." His eyes flicked toward the kitchen, and I knew without looking that Jerry had made himself scarce. "Sit." My legs folded before my brain could fully process the command, and I found myself sliding into the booth across from him. This close, I could smell his cologne. Something dark and expensive that probably had a French name I couldn't pronounce. Beneath it was something else, something dangerous. Gun oil, maybe, or just the scent of power. "You're tired," he observed, cutting into his eggs with surgical precision. "You work too much." "I work enough to pay my bills." The defensive edge in my voice surprised me. Not all of us have choices. Everyone has choices, Elena. Some just have more palatable options than others. He took a bite, chewed thoughtfully. "These are good. Thank you for the honest recommendation." I didn't know what to say to that, so I stayed silent, watching him eat with the kind of precise manners that spoke of expensive boarding schools or brutal military training, maybe both. "Why do you work here?" he asked suddenly. "Because they hired me." That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. My fingers twisted together in my lap beneath the table. I needed a job. Murphy's needed a waitress, and here I am. Not all of us get to choose careers that require suits that cost more than my car. Something flickered in his dark eyes. Amusement, maybe, or respect. Your car being? A 2005 Honda Civic with a broken air conditioner and a passenger door that won't lock. And yet you're still here, still working, still surviving. He set down his fork, his attention now fully on me. That requires strength, I laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. Or just desperation. Perhaps they're the same thing. Before I could respond, one of his guards approached the table, leaning down to whisper something in Constantine's ear. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air around him. A subtle tightening that spoke of danger moving beneath a calm surface. He pulled out his wallet. Leather, probably Italian, and extracted several bills. $100 bills. He laid them on the table, far more than the meal cost. "Keep the change," he said, sliding out of the booth with that same fluid grace. "I can't. This is too much." "You can. And it's not." He buttoned his suit jacket with one hand, a gesture so smooth it seemed automatic. "Thank you for your honesty, Elena Morrison. It's a rare quality." He moved toward the door, his guards falling into formation around him. I should have stayed in the booth. I should have let him walk out of my life and back into whatever dark world he inhabited. I should have counted my unexpected tip and forgotten his face, but something made me stand. Something made me follow. I pushed through the diner door just as Constantine stepped off the curb. His attention on his phone, his guards flanking him but focused on a black SUV pulling up to the corner. The street was mostly empty, the late hour keeping traffic light. That's when I saw it. The car came from nowhere, a sedan with its lights off, engine roaring as it accelerated down the street. It was heading straight for Constantine, who stood in the space between the curb and the parked cars, still absorbed in whatever message he was reading. I didn't think, didn't calculate, didn't consider the insanity of what I was about to do. I lunged forward, my hand shooting out to grab his arm, my body weight pulling him backward with a force born of pure adrenaline and terror. "Move!" We tumbled together, my fingers gripping the expensive fabric of his suit, my body colliding with his as we crashed back onto the sidewalk. The car screamed past, so close I felt the wind of its passage, so close I could have reached out and touched it. Tires squealed. The sedan fishtailed around the corner and disappeared into the night, its engine fading into the distance like a retreating predator. For a moment, everything was silent, except for my ragged breathing and the pounding of my heart. I was lying half on top of Konstantin Volkov, my hand still fisted in his suit jacket, my face inches from his chest. I could feel his heart beneath my cheek, steady, controlled, not racing like mine. Then hands grabbed me, rough, urgent hands that pulled me up and away. The guards had erupted into action, weapons drawn, radios crackling with urgent commands. One held me at arm's length while the other helped Constantine to his feet, their voices sharp with questions I couldn't process. Constantine stood slowly, brushing off his suit with movements that seemed almost casual. But his eyes had gone flat and cold, empty of anything remotely human. He looked at the corner where the car had disappeared, then at his guards, and something passed between them that needed no words. Then he looked at me. I was shaking now, the adrenaline draining away and leaving me hollow. My uniform had a tear at the knee. My hands were scraped from the sidewalk, and I had just saved the life of the most dangerous man in the city. "Get her inside," Constantine said quietly. "Now." The guard holding my arm began to pull me back toward the diner, but I resisted, my eyes still locked on Constantine's face. "Are you okay?" The words tumbled out. "You're not hurt?" His expression shifted, something almost like surprise flickering across his features before that mask of control slammed back down. "I'm fine," he said. Then, softer, "Thanks to you." The guard pulled harder, and this time I let myself be led back to Murphy's. Through the diner window, I watched as Constantine spoke rapidly into his phone, his guards forming a protective circle around him. More vehicles arrived, more SUVs, more men in dark suits. The street that had been nearly empty suddenly swarmed with activity. Jerry appeared beside me, his face the color of old newspaper. "Elena, what the hell did you just do?" I sank into the nearest booth, my legs finally giving out. "I don't know." But that was a lie. I knew exactly what I'd done. I'd grabbed Konstantin Volkov. I'd pulled him out of death's path. I'd put my hands on the untouchable king of the city's underworld and lived to tell about it. I'd saved his life. And somehow, I knew with bone-deep certainty that my life would never be the same. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that car racing toward Konstantin, felt the impact of his body against mine as we hit the pavement, heard the scream of tires that came seconds too close to being the last sound either of us heard. My studio apartment felt smaller than usual in the pre-dawn darkness, the sounds of the city filtering through my thin walls. Sirens. Someone's television turned up too loud. The couple upstairs arguing in Spanish. I lay on my second-hand mattress, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that looked like a map of somewhere I'd never been, and tried to convince myself that what happened was just a random accident. But I knew better. That car had been aimed. Deliberate. Someone had tried to kill Konstantin Volkov, and I'd gotten in the way. My phone buzzed on the milk crate I used as a nightstand. A text from Jerry. Take the day off. Paid. Don't argue. Jerry never gave paid days off. In 2 years, I'd worked through a stomach flu, a sprained ankle, and the anniversary of my father's death. I texted back, "Why?" His response came immediately, "Because I said so. Rest. You earned it." I set the phone down, unease crawling up my spine like cold fingers. Through my window, the sky was beginning to lighten, that ugly gray that came before sunrise, when the city looked tired and mean. I should have felt relieved about the unexpected day off. Instead, I felt exposed, like I'd stepped out from behind a protective wall without realizing it. At 7 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. "Hello?" "Miss Morrison." The voice was male, professional, unfamiliar. "A car will arrive at your building in 30 minutes. Please be ready." "I'm sorry, who is—" "Mr. Volkov requests your presence. The driver will wait no more than 5 minutes." A pause. It would be unwise to refuse. The line went dead. My hands were shaking again, just like they had last night. I looked around my apartment, at the thrift store furniture, the stack of unpaid bills on my counter, the single photograph I owned of my father, taken before the cancer made him unrecognizable. This was my life. Small, quiet, invisible, safe. And now, Konstantin Volkov was sending a car for me. I dressed in the only decent clothes I owned. A simple black dress I'd bought for job interviews, paired with the cardigan I wore when the diner's air conditioning worked too well. My reflection in the bathroom mirror showed dark circles under my eyes, hair that needed washing, the face of someone who'd forgotten how to sleep properly. I looked exactly like what I was. A woman out of her depth. 29 minutes later, a black Mercedes SUV pulled up outside my building. The windows were tinted so dark I couldn't see inside, but I recognized the vehicle. It was identical to the ones that had flooded the street last night after the attack. I grabbed my purse and headed downstairs, my heart hammering with each step. The driver was already waiting by the rear passenger door, a thick-necked man in a dark suit whose eyes swept the street with practiced efficiency before settling on me. "Miss Morrison," he said, opening the door. Not a question. I climbed in, and the door closed behind me with the solid thunk of reinforced steel. The interior smelled like leather and something I couldn't identify. Money, maybe. Or just the absence of struggle. The seats were heated despite the morning warmth. Classical music played softly from hidden speakers. We drove in silence. I tried to track our route, but after the third turn through neighborhoods I didn't recognize, I gave up. We were heading away from my part of town, away from the pawn shops and check-cashing places, away from the buildings with bars on the windows and graffiti on the walls, toward money, toward power, toward whatever world Konstantin Volkov actually inhabited. The city transformed around us. Cracked sidewalks gave way to tree-lined streets. Tired apartment buildings became elegant brownstones. Then mansion-sized homes set back from the road behind iron gates. We drove for 40 minutes, each mile taking me further from anything I recognized. Finally, we turned through a gate that opened automatically, rolling up a private drive lined with manicured hedges. The house, no, estate, that emerged from the greenery made my breath catch. It was massive. 3 stories of pale stone and tall windows, with wings extending on either side of a central entrance that featured columns like something from a museum. Gardens spread in all directions, perfectly maintained, dotted with sculptures that probably cost more than I'd earn in my lifetime. This wasn't just wealth, this was dynasty, legacy, the kind of money that bought silence and loyalty and made problems disappear. The SUV stopped at the front entrance, where another suited guard waited. He opened my door, and I stepped out onto cobblestones that looked hand-laid, each one fitted with obsessive precision. "This way, Miss Morrison." I followed him through front doors that were at least 12 feet tall, into an entrance hall that took my breath away. Marble floors stretched in every direction, reflecting light from a chandelier that hung 2 stories above. A curved staircase swept upward to the left, its banister gleaming. Original artwork, I was sure it was original, hung on walls painted in subtle, expensive colors. My sneakers from last night squeaked on the marble. I'd forgotten to change shoes. "Mr. Volkov is in the morning room," the guard said, leading me through a doorway to the right. The morning room was larger than my entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the gardens, flooding the space with natural light. The furniture was elegant without being ostentatious. A sofa and chairs arranged around a low table, bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes, a desk in the corner that looked antique, and Constantine, standing by the windows with a cup of coffee in his hand. He'd changed from last night's suit to dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. It should have made him look casual, relaxed. Instead, it only emphasized the predatory grace of his movements as he turned to face me. The lean muscle of his forearms, the way he commanded space just by existing in it. "Elena." He set down his coffee. "Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice?" A slight smile touched his lips. "No, but I appreciate the illusion of courtesy." He gestured to the seating area. "Please, sit. Have you eaten breakfast?" "I'm not hungry." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Why am I here?" "Because you saved my life last night, and I don't like being in debt." He remained standing, studying me with that same intense focus from the diner. "Tell me what you saw. Before the car." I swallowed hard. "I just saw you step off the curb, and then the car came out of nowhere. No headlights, going way too fast. Did you see the driver?" "No." "It happened so fast. Think, Elena." He moved closer, and I fought the urge to lean back. Any detail. The color of the car, the license plate, anything inside the vehicle. I closed my eyes, forcing myself back to that moment. The fear, the adrenaline, the split-second decision to move. Dark sedan. Maybe black or navy blue. 4 doors. I didn't see the plate. There might not have been one. And the windows. I think they were tinted. I couldn't see inside. "You're certain they were aiming for me? Not just a drunk driver?" I opened my eyes, meeting his. "They aimed for you. The way they accelerated, the angle they took. They knew where you'd be standing. They were waiting." Something flickered across his face. Approval, maybe. Or grim satisfaction. "You're observant." "I'm a waitress. Observing people is half my job." "And the other half?" "Staying invisible." He studied me for a long moment, and I had the uncomfortable feeling he was seeing past my cheap dress and worn cardigan, past the exhaustion and the fear, to something I didn't even know was there. "You're not invisible, Elena. Not anymore." He moved to the desk, pulling open a drawer. "Last night, you became visible to some very dangerous people, the kind who don't appreciate witnesses." My stomach dropped. "You think they saw me?" "I know they did. I have people reviewing security footage from the surrounding buildings. You're clearly visible pulling me out of the street." He extracted something from the drawer. A phone, sleek and expensive looking, which means you're now a target. The room suddenly felt too small despite its size. "I should go to the police." "The police can't help you." His voice was flat, final. "Half of them are on various payrolls, including mine. The other half lack the resources to protect you from the kind of people who make assassination attempts in broad view of my security detail." "Then what am I supposed to do?" The fear I'd been holding back crept into my voice. "I can't just disappear. I have a job, rent, a life. Had. He moved closer, holding out the phone. As of last night, your old life became untenable. This is your new phone, encrypted, untraceable. My personal number is already programmed in, along with numbers for my security chief and my driver. You'll carry it at all times. I stared at the phone like it was a snake. I don't want your phone. What you want is irrelevant. Someone tried to kill me, and you stopped them. That makes you either an asset or a liability. His eyes locked onto mine, and I saw the ruthlessness beneath the expensive polish. I prefer assets. I'm not part of your world. You became part of my world the moment you grabbed my arm. He set the phone on the table between us. Your apartment is being watched by my people for your protection. By others for less benign purposes. You can't go back there. Not safely. The walls were closing in. My lungs felt too small. Where am I supposed to go? Here. The word hung in the air like a verdict. You'll stay in the East Wing. Full security, full accommodations, anything you need. Consider it protective custody. Protective custody. I laughed, but it sounded hysterical even to my own ears. You mean prison? I mean safety. He moved even closer, and I could smell that same dark cologne from last night. Elena, listen to me carefully. The people who tried to kill me last night don't leave witnesses. They're thorough, professional, and they won't hesitate to eliminate anyone who might identify them. You have two choices: accept my protection or die within the week. Those aren't choices. That's coercion. Call it what you want. No apology in his voice, no softness in his expression. But it's also the truth. I don't make idle threats, and I don't exaggerate danger. You saved my life. Now let me save yours. I wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him he was wrong, that I could take care of myself, that I didn't need some mob boss playing white knight. But the words died in my throat because, deep down, in the part of me that had learned to read danger long before I learned to read people, I knew he was right. I'd seen the deliberate aim of that car. I'd felt the killing intent in its acceleration, and if they'd been willing to strike at Konstantin Volkov in front of his own security, they wouldn't blink at eliminating a diner waitress who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. How long? My voice came out small. How long would I have to stay here until the threat is eliminated? He picked up the phone again, offering it to me. I have people working on identifying who ordered the hit. Once they're dealt with, you can return to your life, or what's left of it. I took the phone because what else could I do? The metal was cool against my palm, the screen dark and silent. A lifeline or a leash, I wasn't sure which. I need to get some things from my apartment, I said finally. Clothes at least. My father's photo, already done. Your belongings are being packed as we speak. Everything will be here within the hour. At my shocked expression, he added, I sent people as soon as you agreed to come this morning. I assumed you'd make the logical choice. You assumed I'd let you kidnap me? I assumed you'd let me keep you alive. No anger in his voice, just cold pragmatism. There's a difference. A woman appeared in the doorway, older, perhaps in her 50s, with silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun and wearing what looked like a designer version of a housekeeper's uniform. She regarded me with curious but not unkind eyes. Ah, Mrs. Chen. Konstantin switched smoothly to English with a slight shift in his accent, somehow becoming even more commanding. Please show Miss Morrison to the Rose Suite. Ensure she has everything she needs. Of course, sir. Mrs. Chen's voice carried a slight British accent. Miss Morrison, if you'll follow me. I stood on shaking legs, clutching the phone like a talisman. Konstantin watched me with those dark, unreadable eyes, and I wondered if he could see how terrified I was. If he cared. Elena. I stopped at the door, looking back. You did the right thing last night, and you're doing the right thing now. I know it doesn't feel like it, but I promise. You're safer here than you've been in a very long time. I wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this was protection and not possession, safety and not captivity. But as Mrs. Chen led me through hallways lined with artwork that belonged in museums, up a staircase that could have accommodated a ball gown, toward a wing of the house I couldn't have found my way out of without a map, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just traded one kind of prison for another. The Rose Suite was larger than my entire apartment. A 4-poster bed dominated one wall, dressed in linens that probably cost more than my monthly rent. French doors opened onto a private balcony overlooking the gardens. The bathroom had heated floors, a soaking tub, and a shower with more jets than I could count. "Your things will arrive shortly," Mrs. Chen said, setting fresh towels on the bathroom counter. "Breakfast is at 8, lunch at 1, dinner at 7, but if you require anything outside those hours, simply use the house phone. My extension is 1, Mr. Volkov's personal line is 9. "Thank you," I managed. She paused at the door, her expression softening slightly. "It's frightening, I know. The first few days are always the hardest. But Mr. Volkov, he keeps his word. If he says you're under his protection, then you are. No one will harm you here. Has he done this before? Brought people here for protection? Not like this." Mrs. Chen's eyes held something I couldn't quite read. Concern, maybe, or warning. "You're the first guest in the Rose Suite. It was his mother's room before she passed. Then she was gone, leaving me alone in a dead woman's bedroom with a phone I didn't want, and a life that was no longer mine." I sank onto the bed. God, it was soft, and finally let myself acknowledge the full weight of what had happened. In less than 12 hours, I'd gone from invisible waitress to protected asset of the city's most dangerous man. My apartment was being emptied by strangers. My job was probably gone, and I was trapped in a gilded cage, no matter how beautiful the bars. My new phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Don't look so miserable. The view from your balcony is better if you actually look at it. K." I crossed to the French doors, pushing them open. The gardens stretched below, and beyond them, I could see other buildings on the estate. A guest house. What looked like a garage, something that might have been a pool house. And there, walking a path between rose bushes, was Constantine. He looked up, as if he'd felt my gaze, and raised his coffee cup in a mock salute. Even from this distance, I could see his smile. It wasn't kind. It wasn't comforting. It was the smile of a predator who'd just acquired something interesting. I stepped back inside and closed the doors. "Welcome to your new life, Elena Morrison. Population, 1 waitress and the man who now owned her." 3 days passed in my golden prison, and I learned the rhythms of Konstantin Volkov's world. He left early each morning, 6 a.m., his motorcade of black SUVs rolling down the drive before most people had their first coffee. He returned at varying hours, sometimes for lunch, sometimes not until after dark. When he was home, the house hummed with activity, phones ringing, men in suits arriving for meetings behind closed doors, conversations in multiple languages that drifted through the halls like smoke. When he was gone, the estate felt like a museum, beautiful, silent, and utterly devoid of life. Mrs. Chen brought my meals on trays when I refused to come downstairs. She didn't comment on my self-imposed isolation, just left the food and took away the barely touched plates from before. The boxes from my apartment sat unopened in the corner of the Rose Suite. I couldn't bring myself to unpack them. Unpacking meant accepting this was real, that this was happening, that I actually lived here now. On the 4th morning, someone knocked on my door. Not the soft, deferential knock of Mrs. Chen, but a firm, commanding rap that made my spine straighten automatically. "Miss Morrison." A man's voice, unfamiliar. "Mr. Volkov requests your presence in his office. Now." I'd been wearing the same yoga pants and oversized sweater for 2 days. My hair was in a messy bun that hadn't been intentionally messy. I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Pale, hollow-eyed, like a ghost haunting her own life. "Give me 10 minutes, I called out. I showered quickly, dressed in jeans and a simple blouse from the boxes I'd been ignoring, and attempted to make myself look like someone who hadn't spent 3 days spiraling into despair. The result was mediocre at best, but it would have to do. The guard outside my door, a different one from before, but wearing the same dark suit, same professional neutrality, led me through the house. In daylight, I could see details I'd missed on my arrival. The way sunlight caught dust motes in the air like tiny stars, the fresh flowers in every room. The security cameras positioned with such subtlety you'd miss them if you weren't looking. We descended to the 1st floor, then down a hallway I hadn't explored. The guard stopped at a set of double doors, knocked once, and opened them without waiting for a response. Miss Morrison, sir. Constantine's office was exactly what I'd expected, and nothing like it at the same time. One wall was entirely windows overlooking the gardens, flooding the space with natural light. The others were lined with bookshelves, not for show, but actually used, with papers marking places and books pulled slightly forward as if recently referenced. A massive desk dominated the center, its surface covered with monitors, phones, and neat stacks of documents. But what caught my attention was the wall behind the desk. A map of the city, marked with colored pins and strings connecting various points. It looked like something from a crime movie, except this wasn't fiction. This was Constantine's empire, laid out in geographic detail. He stood at the windows, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid-fire Russian. When he heard the door, he turned, his eyes finding mine immediately. He said something sharp into the phone, a dismissal or command, and ended the call. Elena, thank you for joining me. He gestured to the chairs across from his desk. Please, sit. I sat, acutely aware of the guard remaining by the door, of the cameras I could now spot in the corners, of the fact that I was in the nerve center of an organization that probably had more blood on its hands than I could imagine. Constantine moved behind his desk, but didn't sit. He stood there, studying me with that same intense focus I was beginning to recognize as his default expression. You look terrible, he said finally. Thank you. That's exactly what every woman wants to hear. I'm not here to flatter you. I'm here to keep you alive, which is difficult when you're clearly trying to waste away in my mother's bedroom. He leaned forward, palms flat on the desk. Mrs. Chen tells me you're barely eating. You haven't left your room except to pace the balcony. You're not sleeping. The guards hear you moving around at 3 a.m. You have people listening to me? Anger flared, hot and sudden. What happened to protection? This feels more like surveillance. It's both, and it's necessary. No apology in his voice. 3 days ago, someone tried to kill me. 2 days ago, a woman matching your description was approached outside a grocery store 6 blocks from your old apartment. When she told the men she wasn't you, they apologized and walked away. The air left my lungs. They're looking for me. Actively, aggressively. They've questioned your neighbors, checked with Murphy's diner. Jerry told them you'd quit and left town. Good man. And they've been monitoring your bank account. You used your debit card once since you arrived here. Once. They tracked it within 2 hours. I just bought coffee at the shop down the... I stopped. There's a coffee shop down the road. I walked there yesterday morning. Constantine's expression went very still, very cold. You left the estate? I walked to the gate and back. 20 minutes, maybe. I needed air. You needed to stay alive. He moved around the desk with that predatory grace, and suddenly he was standing over me, all contained violence and barely leashed fury. Do you understand what I'm telling you? These people will kill you, Elena. Not quickly, not cleanly. They'll take you somewhere quiet and spend hours making sure you can't identify them before they finally let you die. That's what you risked for a cup of coffee. I stood to meet him, refusing to cower, even though everything in me wanted to. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to save your life, didn't ask to be brought here, didn't ask to be a prisoner in a stranger's house while people hunt me like an animal. No. You didn't ask for any of it. His voice dropped, became something softer but no less dangerous. But it's yours now, your reality. And you can either accept that and let me protect you, or you can keep playing the victim until they find you, and everything I've done to keep you safe becomes meaningless. We stood inches apart, and I could feel the heat radiating from him. Could see a small scar on his neck I hadn't noticed before. Up close, his eyes weren't just dark. They were layered, complex, holding depths I couldn't begin to fathom. I want my life back, I whispered. I know. Something shifted in his expression, something almost like sympathy. But first, you have to stay alive long enough to reclaim it, which means you follow my rules, accept my protection, and trust that I know how to handle this situation better than you do. Trust you, the man who kidnapped me, the man who saved you from a worse fate. He stepped back, putting professional distance between us again. I have news. My people identified the vehicle from the attack. It was stolen 3 hours before they used it, then burned and abandoned in an industrial area. Professional work. Do you know who sent them? Not yet, but I have suspicions. He moved to the map on the wall, his finger tracing one of the red strings. I have enemies, Elena. Many enemies. Men who would love nothing more than to see me dead, and my territory carved up among themselves. The attack was too bold, too public. That suggests desperation or confidence. Possibly both. And you think they'll come after me to get to you? I think they'll come after you because you're a loose end. Loose ends are untidy, and these people don't tolerate untidiness. He turned back to me. Which is why you're going to stay here, under guard, until this is resolved. No walks to coffee shops, no trips to the gate, no contact with anyone from your previous life. For how long? As long as it takes. The words settled over me like a physical weight. Days? Weeks? Months? How long could I exist in this limbo, trapped between my old life and whatever this new one was becoming? There's something else, Constantine said, and the change in his tone made my stomach clench. I need you to do something for me. I'm already doing something for you. I'm staying alive. I need you to remember. He pulled a folder from his desk, opened it to reveal photographs. The car that tried to hit me, you said the windows were tinted, but security footage shows that the front windshield, for just a moment before they accelerated, was clear. The driver was visible. He spread the photographs across the desk. 5 men, all in their 30s or 40s, all with that same hard look that spoke of violence as vocation. Do any of these faces look familiar? Even remotely? I studied them, trying to pull up that split-second memory of the car bearing down, the moment before impact when everything had crystallized into absolute clarity. But I'd been focused on Constantine, on getting him out of the way, not on memorizing the driver's features. I don't know, I admitted. It happened so fast. Try. His hand touched my shoulder, and I jumped at the contact. Close your eyes. Walk yourself through it. You were inside the diner, then you came out. What made you look at the street? I closed my eyes, letting his voice guide me back. I heard the engine. It was loud, aggressive. Wrong for that time of night on that street. Good. What did you see? You, standing by the curb. Your guards focused on the SUV that was pulling up, and then the other car, coming from the left, no headlights. I could see it now, playing behind my eyelids like a movie. Dark color. 4 doors. It was moving fast, getting faster. And the driver... I stopped. There was something there, just at the edge of my memory. A flash of face, caught in the ambient light from the street lamps. Thin, I said slowly. The driver was thin, angular face, and something on his neck. A tattoo, maybe? Dark marks on the side of his neck. Which side? Left. His left side. I opened my eyes. That's all I saw. I'm sorry. But Constantine was smiling, a real smile this time, sharp and satisfied. He pulled one photograph from the pile, holding it up. This man, Viktor Sokolov. He has a tattoo of a spiderweb on his left neck. He's an enforcer for the Bratva, the Russian Brotherhood. They've been trying to move into my territory for the past 6 months. The photograph showed a man exactly as I'd described, thin, with sharp cheekbones and cold eyes, and there, visible above his collar, was the edge of a dark tattoo. That's him, I whispered. I'm almost certain. Almost isn't certain in a court of law, but it's good enough for me. Constantine pulled out his phone, sent a rapid text. My people will find Victor, and when they do, he'll tell us who gave the order. What will you do to him? He looked at me, and for a moment the mask slipped, revealing something cold and ancient beneath the civilized veneer. What needs to be done? This is my world, Elena. It's not clean, it's not pretty, and it doesn't follow the rules you're used to. But it has its own justice, and Viktor Sokolov is about to receive his. I should have been horrified, should have been appalled at the casual promise of violence in his voice. But instead, I felt a dark satisfaction, a primal understanding that men who tried to kill, who would have killed me if Constantine's people hadn't been watching, deserved whatever came next. I'll need you to give a formal statement to my security chief. Constantine continued. All business now. Everything you remember about that night, no matter how small, details you think are irrelevant might be the key to identifying others involved. Okay. The word came out smaller than I intended. He studied me for a long moment, and when he spoke again, his voice had softened fractionally. You're doing well, Elena. Better than most would in your situation. That takes strength. Or just stubbornness. Often the same thing. He moved toward the door, then paused. Mrs. Chen mentioned you haven't unpacked, that you're treating the Rose Suite like a hotel room. Because I'm not staying forever, no. But you're staying for now, and living out of boxes is no way to exist. He opened the door, the guard stepping aside automatically. Unpack. Settle in. This doesn't have to be a prison, Elena. It can simply be a place where you're safe until you can go home. And if home doesn't exist anymore? The question hung between us, heavy with implications neither of us wanted to examine too closely. Then we'll build you a new one, he said quietly. But first, we keep you breathing. He left, taking his guards with him, and I was alone in his office with photographs of dangerous men and a map of an empire built on blood and power. Through the windows, I could see the gardens stretching toward manicured perfection, everything controlled, everything in its place, just like me. I returned to the Rose Suite, and for the first time since arriving, I opened the boxes from my apartment. My clothes, my books, my father's photograph in its cheap frame. The accumulated debris of a small life, now transplanted to a room worth more than everything I owned combined. I hung my dresses in a closet bigger than my old bathroom. I placed my father's photo on the nightstand, his smile frozen in time, forever healthy, forever happy. I arranged my few books on the shelf, their worn spines looking shabby next to the leather-bound volumes that came with the room. And when I was done, when my life had been absorbed into this space like a drop of water into an ocean, I sat on the edge of the bed and finally let myself cry. For my father, dead 3 years and still missed every day. For my life, small and simple and mine, now gone. For the girl I'd been 4 days ago, who thought her biggest problem was worn-out sneakers and unpaid bills. And for the woman I was becoming, whoever she was, living in a dead woman's room under the protection of a dangerous man, with enemies I couldn't see hunting me in the dark. My new phone buzzed. A text from Constantine. Dinner tonight. 7 p.m. Dining room. Not a request. I typed back. What if I say no? His response came immediately. Then I'll have your dinner brought to you, along with a reminder that isolation serves no one. 7 p.m. Elena. Be there. I stared at the phone, at this device that had become my leash to him, and made a decision. If I was going to survive this, really survive it, not just physically but mentally, I couldn't hide in this room forever. I couldn't let fear make me smaller than I already felt. At 6:55 p.m., I changed into the black dress I'd worn on my first day here, the only thing I owned nice enough for what I assumed would be a formal dining room. I brushed my hair until it shone, applied the single tube of lipstick I owned, and looked at my reflection. I looked like a girl playing dress-up in a world she didn't belong to. But I'd been invisible my whole life. Maybe it was time to be seen. I opened my door at exactly 7 p.m. and found a guard waiting to escort me downstairs. Whatever came next, I would face it. I had no other choice. The dining room was absurdly grand. A table that could seat 20, positioned beneath another crystal chandelier that cast prismatic light across walls adorned with oil paintings of people I didn't recognize. But only 2 places had been set, one at the head of the table and one to its right, creating an island of intimacy in all that space. Constantine stood by the windows, wearing dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that somehow made him look both more casual and more dangerous. He turned when I entered, and something flickered in his eyes as he took in my appearance. "You came," he said. "You didn't leave me much choice. There's always a choice." He moved to pull out the chair to his right. "You could have refused and stayed hungry in your room. The fact that you're here suggests curiosity at minimum." I sat, hyper-aware of his proximity as he pushed the chair in. His cologne surrounded me, that same dark, expensive scent that I was beginning to associate with him specifically. "Or maybe I was just tired of eating alone," I said. That too. He took his seat at the head of the table, close enough that I could have reached out and touched him if I'd wanted to. Wine? I don't drink. A woman of discipline. Rare. He poured himself a glass from the bottle already open. Red, probably worth more than my monthly rent had been. Mrs. Chen prepared something special tonight. She's convinced you need feeding up. As if summoned, Mrs. Chen appeared with the first course, a soup that smelled like heaven, garnished with fresh herbs and a drizzle of something that caught the light. She set it before me with a small smile. Butternut, squash, and sage, she said. Comfort food for difficult times. Thank you, I managed, overwhelmed by the simple kindness in her voice. We ate in silence for a few minutes, and I had to admit the soup was extraordinary, rich, perfectly seasoned, the kind of thing I'd never have been able to afford in my old life. Each spoonful felt like a small betrayal of the person I used to be. You're thinking too loudly, Constantine observed. I can hear your thoughts from here. I was just thinking how strange this all is. 4 days ago, I was serving meatloaf to truck drivers. Now I'm eating soup that probably costs more per bowl than I made in tips all week. Does it make you uncomfortable? Everything about this makes me uncomfortable. I set down my spoon. I don't belong here in this world. I don't understand the rules. Don't speak the language. I'm like, I don't know. Like a stray cat someone brought inside, and everyone's waiting to see if I'll scratch the furniture or adjust. He smiled, a real one this time, reaching his eyes. That's a better metaphor than you realize. Stray cats are survivors. They're cautious, observant, and they don't trust easily. All good qualities in my line of work. Your line of work. I couldn't help the edge in my voice. You mean crime. Let's not dress it up in euphemisms. Fair enough. He sipped his wine, unbothered by my bluntness. Yes, I'm a criminal. I run operations that exist outside the law, some violent, some simply illegal, all profitable. I control territory, manage conflicts, and make decisions that affect thousands of lives. Does that frighten you? Yes. Honesty seemed safer than pretense. But not as much as the people trying to kill me. Practical. I appreciate that. Mrs. Chen returned to clear our bowls, replacing them with the main course. Some kind of fish with roasted vegetables that looked like art on the plate. Tell me about your father. The abrupt change of subject threw me. What? Your father. Mrs. Chen mentioned you have his photograph in your room. You clearly cared for him. I don't want to talk about my father with you. Why not? Because he was good, decent. He worked hard, paid his taxes, never hurt anyone. He was the exact opposite of everything you represent. The words came out harsher than I'd intended, but I didn't take them back. Constantine studied me over his wine glass, and for a long moment, I thought I'd crossed a line, that the civilized veneer would crack, and I'd see the violence beneath. But instead, he simply nodded. You're right. He probably was my opposite. Tell me about him anyway. Maybe it was the isolation of the past few days, or the strange intimacy of the candlelight, or simply the fact that I'd been holding too much inside for too long. Whatever the reason, I found myself talking. He was a mechanic, owned a small shop, nothing fancy, just honest work. After my mother left when I was 2, it was just us. He taught me how to change oil, how to read people by watching their hands, how to find beauty in small things. I pushed vegetables around my plate. He got sick when I was 20. Cancer, aggressive. We didn't have good insurance, so I worked 3 jobs trying to keep up with the medical bills. It wasn't enough. Nothing was ever enough. How long ago did he die? 3 years. He lasted 18 months after diagnosis. I looked up, meeting Constantine's eyes. I was with him at the end, held his hand while he went. He kept apologizing, for the bills, for leaving me alone, for not being able to fix this the way he'd fixed everything else in my life. As if any of it was his fault. It wasn't. Constantine's voice was soft. My mother died of cancer too. 10 years ago. She had the best doctors, the most expensive treatments, everything money could buy. It didn't matter. Cancer doesn't care about wealth or power. It just takes what it wants. The admission surprised me. I tried to imagine Constantine young, vulnerable, watching his mother die in the very room where I now slept. The image didn't quite fit with the dangerous man across from me. But maybe that was the point. Maybe we all wore masks, hiding our wounds beneath whatever armor we could find. Is that why you put me in her room? I asked. Some kind of, I don't know, penance? No. I put you there because it's the safest room in the house. Reinforced walls, bulletproof windows, direct line to security. If someone somehow breaches the estate, that room gives you the best chance of survival until my people can respond. He paused. But also, yes, my mother would have liked you. She had a soft spot for strays. I'm not a stray. No, you're a survivor. Like I said, similar qualities. We finished dinner with less tension than we'd started. The conversation drifting to safer topics, books we'd read, places we'd like to visit, the strange comfort of routine even in chaos. Constantine was an easy conversationalist when he chose to be, intelligent and well-read, with a dry humor that caught me off guard. It would be easy, I realized, to forget what he was, to let the expensive clothes and cultured manner hide the blood on his hands. But I couldn't afford that kind of forgetting, not if I wanted to survive this with my soul intact. Mrs. Chen brought dessert, chocolate mousse that melted on the tongue, and I was almost relaxed when Constantine's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and everything about him changed. The ease vanished, replaced by that cold, controlled intensity I'd seen in his office. Excuse me. He stood, already typing a response. I need to handle something. Please finish your dessert. Mrs. Chen will show you back to your room when you're ready. He was gone before I could respond, moving with urgent purpose. Through the dining room windows, I saw lights flare to life across the estate, security lights, vehicle headlights, the sudden activity of men mobilizing. Something had happened. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, her expression carefully neutral. More mousse, dear? What's going on? Nothing for you to worry about. Mr. Volkov handles these matters personally. Mrs. Chen. I stood, abandoning my dessert. Please. I'm not a child. If something's happening, if I'm in danger, I deserve to know. She studied me for a long moment, then sighed. They found Viktor Sokolov, the man from the photograph. He's being brought here now for questioning. My blood ran cold. Questioning. Mr. Volkov will want answers about who ordered the hit. Viktor will provide those answers. Her tone made it clear exactly how those answers would be obtained. You should return to your room, Miss Morrison. What happens next is not something you want to witness. But I couldn't move. Couldn't retreat to the safety of my golden cage while somewhere on this estate, a man was about to be tortured for information. A man who'd tried to kill Constantine, yes, but also a man who was human, who would scream and bleed and break. Because of me. Because I'd identified him from a split-second glance. Where? The word came out as a whisper. Miss Morrison. Where are they taking him? Mrs. Chen's expression softened with something like pity. The old carriage house, behind the main garage. But truly, dear, you don't want to see this. Mr. Volkov. He's good at what he does. Too good. It changes something in you. Witnessing that kind of thing. I thought about my father. About the way cancer had changed him from strong to fragile. About holding his hand while he died. I'd witnessed plenty of things that changed me. What was one more? Can you show me how to get there? Miss Morrison. Elena. Please, call me Elena. I met her eyes. And please show me the way. I need to see this. Need to understand what world I'm actually living in now. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Follow me. But stay back. Stay quiet. And for God's sake, don't let Mr. Volkov know you're there. He won't appreciate the audience. We moved through the house. Mrs. Chen leading me down servants' corridors I hadn't known existed, through a kitchen that gleamed with professional equipment, out a side door into the night air. The temperature had dropped, and I shivered in my thin dress as we crossed dark lawns toward a cluster of outbuildings. The carriage house looked innocent enough from the outside. Old stone, converted from its original purpose into something modern. But light spilled from the windows, and as we approached, I heard voices. Men speaking in rapid Russian, their tones clipped and professional. Mrs. Chen pulled me into the shadow of a large tree, perhaps 20 feet from a window that stood open to the spring air. From here, We could see inside but remain hidden in darkness. The interior had been set up like a workshop. Concrete floor with a drain in the center, metal table, various tools hanging on the walls, and there, tied to a chair beneath fluorescent lights, harsh enough to make him squint, was Viktor Sokolov. He looked smaller in person than in his photograph. Thin, yes, with that angular face and dead eyes, but also somehow diminished. Blood trickled from his nose, and one eye was already swelling shut. Two of Konstantin's men flanked him, silent and menacing, and Konstantin stood in front of him, jacket removed, sleeves rolled up, looking more dangerous than I'd ever seen him. Viktor. His voice carried through the open window, conversational, almost friendly. I'm going to ask you questions. You're going to answer them truthfully. If you lie, or if you refuse to answer, my associates will encourage your cooperation. Do you understand? Viktor spat blood onto the concrete. Fuck you, Volkov. That's not an answer. Konstantin nodded to one of his men, who moved forward with casual efficiency and drove a fist into Viktor's stomach. The Russian doubled over as much as his restraints allowed, gasping for air. I flinched, and Mrs. Chen's hand found mine in the darkness, squeezing gently. Let's try again, Konstantin said. Who ordered the hit on me? Silence. Except for Viktor's labored breathing. Another nod. Another blow. This one to the ribs. I heard the crack of bone even from where we stood. Viktor, this can be quick, or it can be very, very slow. The choice is yours. Konstantin crouched down, bringing himself to eye level with his prisoner. You're already dead. You know that. The moment you took that contract, you signed your death warrant. But how you die, that's still negotiable. Answer my questions and I'll make it quick, clean, refuse, and we'll be here all night. And by morning, you'll be begging me to pull the trigger. You think you're so powerful, Viktor wheezed. But you're bleeding territory, losing control. The Bratva is coming, Volkov, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. The Bratva sent you? A painful laugh. The Bratva doesn't need to send anyone. You're destroying yourself, letting emotion cloud your judgment. Bringing that waitress here. Everyone knows about her now. Everyone sees the weakness. Konstantin's expression didn't change. But something in the air shifted, became colder. What did you just say? The girl. Viktor grinned through bloody teeth. Your new pet. The one who saved you. Word on the street is you're keeping her here, protecting her like she's precious. That's not the Konstantin Volkov I knew. That's a man who's lost his edge. Konstantin stood slowly, and even from a distance I could see the violence coiling in his body, ready to strike. Is that why they sent you? To test me? To see if I'd grown soft? They sent me because you're vulnerable. And your obsession with that girl proves it. The next few minutes were brutal, systematic, professional. Konstantin's men worked Viktor over with clinical precision, while Konstantin watched, occasionally asking questions, occasionally nodding for them to continue. I wanted to look away, wanted to run back to my room and pretend I'd never seen this, but I forced myself to watch, to understand that this was the price of the protection I'd accepted. This was who Konstantin Volkov really was. Finally, Viktor broke. The words came tumbling out, names, locations, details of the Bratva's plans to move against Konstantin's operations. He talked about the hit, about the backup assassins waiting if he failed, about the larger war brewing in the shadows of the city, and through it all, Konstantin listened with absolute focus, absorbing every detail, filing it away in that sharp mind behind his cold eyes. When Viktor had nothing left to tell, when he slumped in his chair broken and gasping, Konstantin pulled a gun from the small of his back. The movement was smooth, practiced, inevitable. Thank you for your cooperation, he said quietly. I'll keep my promise. This will be quick. The shot echoed across the estate, sharp and final. Viktor's body jerked once, then went still. I must have made a sound, a gasp maybe, or just a sharp intake of breath, because Konstantin's head snapped toward the window, toward where Mrs. Chen and I stood hidden in shadows. For a moment, our eyes met across the distance. Even in the darkness, I knew he could see me. Knew he understood I'd witnessed everything. His expression went carefully blank, and then he turned away, already issuing orders to his men about disposal of the body. Mrs. Chen pulled me back, guiding me through the darkness toward the house. I moved automatically, my mind still processing what I'd seen. The casual brutality, the calculated violence, the man I'd had dinner with, conversing about books and dead mothers, transforming into something cold and merciless and utterly foreign. We reached my room in silence. Mrs. Chen squeezed my hand once more before leaving me alone with my thoughts and the darkness. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Victor's broken body, heard the echo of that final gunshot, remembered the absolute lack of hesitation in Constantine's movements. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Constantine, "We need to talk. My office. Now." I almost didn't go, almost stayed in bed and pretended I hadn't seen the message, but we both knew that wouldn't work. We both knew we'd crossed some invisible line tonight, and there was no going back. I dressed and made my way downstairs. No guard to escort me this time. I knew the way now, had learned the rhythms of this house, the layout of my cage. Constantine's office was lit by a single lamp on his desk. He stood by the windows, staring out at the dark gardens, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He didn't turn when I entered. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said quietly. "I know. Mrs. Chen shouldn't have taken you there." "I made her," I insisted. I moved further into the room, stopping a few feet behind him. "I needed to see who you really are. And now you know." He finally turned, and in the low light, his face looked older, harder. "I'm exactly what you accused me of being. A criminal, a killer, a man who handles problems with violence because that's the language my world speaks. You killed him." "Yes." Without hesitation. "Because hesitation in my business gets you killed." He drained his whiskey, set the glass down with careful control. Victor was a dead man the moment he took that contract. If I'd let him live, let him report back to his masters, it would be seen as weakness. More would come, and they wouldn't stop with me. They'd come for everyone in this house, including you. So you killed him to protect me. I killed him to protect my interests. You're just part of those interests now. His eyes found mine, and I saw something raw there, something almost like pain. "I told you this world isn't clean or pretty, Elena. You insisted on seeing it anyway. Now you have, and you can't unsee it. Can't go back to whatever illusions you had about who I am or what I do." He was right. The man who'd poured wine at dinner, who'd spoken gently about his mother, who'd shown me kindness in his own strange way. He was the same man who'd orchestrated torture and pulled the trigger without mercy. Both versions were real. Both were Constantine. And somehow, impossibly, I wasn't running. "The things Victor said," I ventured, "about you being vulnerable because of me, was he right?" Constantine laughed, a harsh, bitter sound, perceptive, even under duress. "Yes, he was right. By bringing you here, by making your protection visible, I've shown the world that I care about something beyond power and territory. In my position, caring is weakness. Weakness is fatal. Then why did you do it?" The question hung between us. He could have lied, could have said it was pure strategy, that I was simply a witness he needed to keep alive. But instead, he moved closer. Close enough that I could smell gunpowder beneath his cologne, could see the exhaustion in the lines around his eyes. "Because when you pulled me out of that street," he said quietly, "you didn't think about who I was or what I could do for you. You just saw someone about to die and acted. No calculation, no angle, pure instinct to save a life." His hand lifted, almost touching my face before dropping back to his side. "I haven't met anyone like that in a very long time, maybe ever. And I couldn't—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "I couldn't let them kill you for that, for being good in a world full of people like me." The admission stripped something raw between us. I should have been terrified, should have demanded to leave, consequences be damned. But standing there in his office at 3 a.m, with the ghost of Victor's death hanging in the air and Constantine's walls finally cracking, I realized something terrifying. I didn't want to leave. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange, suspended reality. Constantine's people dismantled the Bratva's operation with surgical precision. I heard whispers from the guards, caught fragments of phone conversations in languages I didn't understand. Safe houses raided, territory reclaimed, messages sent that required no translation. Stay away from what's mine. And I was his, apparently. That's what Victor had called me. Constantine's pet. His weakness. But I didn't feel weak anymore. Constantine had given me access to the estate's full facilities. The library with its thousands of books. The gym with equipment I didn't know how to use. The gardens where I could walk for hours without seeing the same flower twice. Guards followed at a discreet distance. Always present, but never intrusive. I'd stopped thinking of them as jailers and started seeing them as what they were. Protection. We had dinner together most evenings. Sometimes we talked about nothing. Weather, books, the mundane details of existence. Sometimes we sat in comfortable silence, two people learning to occupy the same space without collision. And sometimes, late at night when guards changed shifts and the house settled into darkness, he'd text me from whatever room he was working in, and I'd find myself wandering down to his office where we'd talk until dawn threatened the horizon. He never touched me, never crossed the invisible line between protection and possession. But the air between us grew heavier with each passing day, charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. On a Thursday morning, 3 weeks after Victor's death, Constantine summoned me to his office with unusual urgency. "They're done," he said without preamble. "The Bratva leadership has been dealt with. The men who ordered the hit are dead or imprisoned. The threat to you is eliminated." I should have felt relief, joy, freedom. Instead, I felt only a strange hollowness, like something essential had been carved out and left vacant. "So I can go home," I said. "Your apartment has been maintained. Your job at Murphy's is waiting if you want it. Jerry's been keeping your position open. You're free to return to your life whenever you choose." He stood behind his desk, every inch the powerful man I'd first met. No trace of the vulnerability he'd shown me in darkness. "My driver can take you this afternoon." "That's it? Just back to normal?" "What did you expect?" Something flickered in his eyes. "A golden cage is still a cage, Elena. I told you this was temporary. Now the temporary is over." I should have thanked him. Should have packed my things and fled back to safety, to invisibility, to the small life that had been mine before I'd grabbed his arm and changed everything. But I'd changed too. 3 weeks in Constantine's world had shown me things I couldn't forget. Not just violence and danger, but also luxury and security. Books I could read without worrying about electricity bills. Food that didn't come from a diner menu. The strange comfort of being seen, really seen, by someone who looked at me like I mattered. And if I don't want to go back, the words escaped before I could stop them. Constantine went very still. "What?" "My old life. It was small, safe, invisible. And it was mine, yes, but it was also—" I struggled for words. "Lonely. So lonely I'd forgotten what it felt like to matter to anyone. Then you made me matter. Maybe for the wrong reasons, maybe just as a witness, or a liability you needed to protect. But you made me visible. Elena, I'm not finished." I moved closer to his desk, every step feeling like falling. "These 3 weeks have been terrifying, but they've also been the most alive I've felt since my father died. You've shown me a world I didn't know existed. Not just the violence, but the books, the art, the way you see the city as something to shape, rather than something that shapes you." And my voice broke. "I don't want to go back to being invisible." "You don't know what you're asking." "Then tell me." I was standing right across from him now, the desk the only barrier between us. "Tell me what staying would mean." He stared at me for a long moment, and I watched the war play out across his face. Control versus desire, logic versus something more primal. "It would mean being part of this world permanently," he said finally. "Accepting the danger, the violence, the fact that there will always be another victor, another threat. It would mean giving up any pretense of normalcy and embracing something darker. I've already seen the darkness. It doesn't scare me as much as going back to pretending I don't exist." And what about me? His voice dropped, became something rough and raw. What about the fact that I stopped seeing you as an obligation weeks ago? That I think about you when I should be thinking about business? That every conversation with you makes me want things I have no right to want? My heart was racing now, every nerve alive with electricity. What things? He moved around the desk with that predatory grace, and suddenly there was nothing between us. He stood close enough that I could feel his heat, could see the rapid pulse in his neck that betrayed the control he was desperately maintaining. This, he said quietly, and his hand finally touched my face, cupping my jaw with surprising gentleness. You, Elena. I want you, not as an obligation or a witness, as mine. Then have me. The words shattered his control. His mouth found mine with desperate hunger, and I kissed him back with 3 weeks of tension and fear and longing. His hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer, and I gripped his shoulders like an anchor in a storm that was finally, beautifully breaking. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. This is insane, he whispered. Completely. I smiled against his mouth, but I stopped caring about sanity the night I pulled you out of the street. You'll stay? Truly? I'll stay. The words felt like a vow, but not as your captive, as your whatever this is. Partner, companion, someone who chose you in this world and all the darkness that comes with it. Equal, he said firmly. You'll be my equal. My home, not my possession. His thumb traced my cheekbone. I'll protect you, but I won't own you. Can you accept that? Can you? He laughed, the sound lighter than I'd ever heard from him. I'll try. God help me, I'll try. The next 6 months were a revelation. Constantine taught me his world. Not just the violence, but the strategy, the politics, the careful balance of power that kept his empire running. I attended meetings, offered opinions, learned to read situations and people the way I'd once read diner customers. I took classes, business, languages, self-defense. Constantine hired instructors who taught me how to shoot, how to negotiate, how to carry myself with the confidence his world required. I was no longer the invisible waitress. I was becoming someone new, someone stronger. We moved through darkness together, but we also found light. Quiet mornings in the garden, late nights in his library, reading while he worked. The careful building of something neither of us had planned, but both of us needed. And one evening, exactly 1 year after I'd grabbed his arm and saved his life, Constantine took me back to Murphy's diner. Jerry nearly dropped his spatula when we walked in. Constantine in his expensive suit, me in a dress that actually fit properly now, both of us flanked by discreet security. Elena, Jerry's voice cracked. You're alive. I'm alive. I hugged him over the counter. And I'm happy. Really, truly happy. We sat in that same booth where Constantine had eaten eggs, and I'd been invisible. We ordered terrible coffee and decent pie. And we talked about how a single moment, one instinctive grab, one decision to act without thinking, had changed 2 lives completely. Do you regret it? He asked, stirring sugar into coffee he wouldn't drink. Saving me that night? I thought about my old apartment, sold now. About the job I'd left behind. About the small, safe life I'd traded for something dangerous and vast and unpredictable. Not even for a second, I said. He smiled, that real smile I'd learned to treasure, and took my hand across the table. Neither do I. We left Murphy's as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of fire. Constantine's motorcade waited, ready to take us back to the estate that had become home. Back to the world we'd built together, brick by dangerous brick. I'd been invisible once, a ghost in my own life, serving others and never asking for more. But Konstantin Volkov had seen me, had made me matter, had given me a choice, even when it terrified him. And I'd chosen the darkness, because in that darkness, I'd finally found light. We drove into the evening, hand in hand, 2 survivors who'd found each other in the space between death and salvation. The city spread out around us, vast, dangerous, beautiful, and for the first time in my life I knew exactly where I belonged, here, with him. In this impossible, perfect life we'd built from chaos and choice, and one split-second decision to save a stranger. I was Elena Morrison, once invisible, now impossible to miss. And I was finally, wonderfully home.